a 1998 arrest in a park, a 2017 magazine cover, a 1976 interview that shocked the world. These were the moments the music business changed forever. These rock stars weren't just icons. They were hiding a huge part of themselves. We're about to uncover the secret lives of 20 music legends, and the truth about one pop idol is stunning. 1. Barry Manilow. For people who grew up in the 1970s and 80s, Barry Manilow was everywhere. He was the king of the romantic ballad. Songs like Mandy, Copacabana, and I Write the Songs were massive hits. He was a superstar, and he had a huge following of female fans who adored him. To put it mildly, he was the ultimate showman. But here's the kicker. While he was singing these big love songs, Barry was living a completely private life. Back in 1978, at the height of his fame, he met a man named Gary Keefe. Gary became his manager, and he also became his partner. For nearly 40 years, they were together in secret. Think about that. 40 years. They built a life together, all while the world saw Barry as the ultimate single guy. Then, in 2017, the story finally came out. Barry was 73 years old when he appeared on the cover of People magazine. He officially announced his truth to the world. He said he had kept his life with Gary a secret because he was afraid of disappointing his fans. He thought they would be upset. But when the news broke, he said the reaction was nothing but love and support. It's pretty wild to think a star that big could keep a secret that long. But Barry waited 40 years to share his truth. Our next star is from a totally different world. He wears leather and studs and fronts one of the loudest bands on earth. And his secret was just as big. 2. Rob Halford. When you think of heavy metal, you think of Judas Priest. And when you think of Judas Priest, you think of their frontman, Rob Halford. He is known as the metal god. He has a screaming, powerful voice that defines the genre. But he also defined the look of heavy metal. Here is a massive wow factor. You know that whole heavy metal uniform? The black leather, the shiny studs, the chains? Rob Halford is the one who brought that look to the stage. But the thing nobody tells you is where he got that look. He was inspired by the gay leather club scene that he was a part of in private. He was hiding in plain sight, and fans had no idea. You see, the heavy metal world in the 80s was very macho. Rob felt that he could never, ever tell the truth. He thought it would destroy the band, so he kept his secret for his entire career. Finally, in 1998, in an interview on MTV, he just said it. He told the world he was a gay man. He was terrified. He thought the metal world would reject him. But for the most part, the fans and other bands supported him. Rob Halford defined the look of metal while hiding his true self. But our next star was the opposite. He was flashy, wore feathers, and played the piano. And his secret was one of the music. World's worst kept. 3. Elton John. He is a global legend, the Rocket Man. In the 1970s, he was arguably the biggest music star on the entire planet. He was famous for his wild, over-the-top stage outfits, his crazy glasses, and his string of #1 hits. Many people are crazy about his music to this day. Because he was so flashy, people whispered about his private life for years. Then, in 1976, he did something incredibly brave for the time. He gave an interview to Rolling Stone magazine and said he was attracted to both genders, meaning he liked both men and women. People were shocked. You just didn't do that back then. It was a huge career risk. His journey was a bit complicated after that. In the 1980s, he even married a woman, a German sound engineer named Renata. But that relationship didn't last. He later realized and accepted that he was fully a gay man. Today, he is married to his longtime partner, David Furnish, and they have a family. He is a huge voice for the community and has raised hundreds of millions of dollars for health causes. Elton's journey was public and messy. Our next star also had a very public and very messy coming out, but it wasn't his choice. It started with a flashing blue light. 4. George Michael. Remember the band Wham? In the 1980s, they were a pop explosion. And the breakout star was George Michael. He had the voice, the look, and the moves. After Wham, his solo career was even bigger. His album Faith made him one of the most famous men in the world. He was a heartthrob for millions and millions of women. But George Michael was living a life of deep pain. He knew he was gay, but he was terrified to tell the world. He was at the center of the pop universe and felt trapped by his image. He was dating men in private, but he was living in constant fear of being found out. Then, in 1998, everything changed. He was arrested by an undercover police officer in a public park in Beverly Hills. The news was instantly everywhere. The story was on every TV channel and every newspaper cover. To put it mildly, he was forced to tell the world his truth. He had no choice. He later said he was deeply sad that he couldn't tell people on his own terms. He felt like his coming out was stolen from him by the arrest. George Michael's secret was forced out by an arrest. Our next musician's secret was kept for decades, and he only shared it when he was facing a major health battle. 5. Chuck Panozzo. The rock band Styx made some of the biggest anthems of the 70s and 80s. Songs like Come Sail Away and Mr. Roboto are classic rock radio staples. Chuck Panozzo was the bass player for the band. He was there from the very beginning, playing alongside his twin brother, John, who was the band's drummer. They were rock royalty, but for all those years on tour, living the rock star life, Chuck was holding on to a huge secret. He knew he was gay, but he felt he couldn't tell anyone. He was in a huge, mainstream rock band. And it was a different time. The thing nobody tells you is how lonely that must have been, being on top of the world but unable to be yourself. He kept his secret for his entire career. Finally, in 2001, he decided to come out. He made the brave choice to tell his story. The reason he did it was that he was facing a big health challenge. He was diagnosed with HIV and wanted to be honest about his life. He is now healthy and a strong advocate for the community and for health awareness. Chuck kept his secret at the height of rock fame, but our next artist was supposed to be the first openly gay rock star. Instead, his story became a sad warning. 6. Jobriath. This story is a little different, and it's a bit of a sad one. Back in 1973, there was a massive buzz in the music industry about a new artist. His name was Jobriath. The hype was unbelievable. He was signed to a record deal for $500,000. In 1973, that was an absolutely huge amount of money, one of the biggest deals ever at the time. His face was put on billboards and on the sides of city buses. He was called the next David Bowie. And here was the main thing. Jobriath was completely open about being gay from the very start. He called himself the true fairy of rock. He didn't hide at all. But not all things are what they seem. The public was not ready for him. His albums, which were very theatrical, just didn't sell. The hype was huge, but the sales were tiny. The press made fun of him. To put it mildly, the whole thing was a disaster. His record label dropped him, and his career was over almost as fast as it started. He was openly himself, but the world sadly punished him for it. Jobriath was openly gay, and his career failed. Our next star was in a massive 70s rock band, but he did the opposite. He kept his secret for his whole career, only coming out much later. 7. Andy Fraser. You know the song All Right Now. Even if you don't know the name, you know the riff. It's one of the most famous rock songs ever. That monster hit was by a British band called Free. The bass player for that band was a man named Andy Fraser. Andy was a music wonder. He was just 15 years old when he joined the band. 15. He was a co-writer on All Right Now when he was just a teenager. He was a certified rock star before he was even old enough to vote. He was living the life, touring the world, and playing in front of huge crowds. But he was also hiding who he was. He lived the life people expected of him. He got married and had a family with 2 daughters. But that wasn't his whole truth. Much later in his life, long after the band's peak, Andy came out and was open about his true self. He finally felt free to be the person he had always been in private. Andy Fraser was a 70s rock hero. Our next star is from a much more modern band, known for their unique look and sound. And his journey was about being true to himself from the start. 8. Stefan Olsdahl. In the 1990s, the rock scene was changing. A band called Placebo hit the scene, and they didn't look or sound like anyone else. They had a very unique, androgynous look, which means they blended male and female styles. They made people guess, and they loved to play with their image. The lead singer, Brian Molko, was open about his own fluid identity, and the band's bass player and guitarist, a tall Swede named Stefan Olsdahl, was also open about his. In an interview with a music magazine way back in 1996, Stefan came out as gay. This was still a rare thing for a rock band that was just getting started. But for Placebo, being themselves was their image. They didn't want to hide. They didn't want to pretend. They built a massive, loyal following of fans who loved them for their honesty and their powerful music. They proved that you could be different and still be a huge rock star. Stefan was open from the 90s, but our next rocker had to fight a lot harder. She was a woman in the male-dominated rock world, and she came out at a huge public event. 9. Melissa Etheridge. Melissa Etheridge has one of the most powerful and recognizable voices in rock music. She burst onto the scene in the late 1980s with her bluesy, raw, and honest songs. She was a woman playing a guitar and singing her heart out, and she quickly gained a big following. But for the first few years of her career, she kept her private life quiet. She let her music do the talking. Then, in 1993, that all changed. It was a big year. A new president, Bill Clinton, was in office, and there was a big party to celebrate. Melissa was one of the performers. And right there, at that big public event, she just said it. She announced her truth to the world. She came out as a lesbian. It was a huge, brave moment. She was 32 years old and decided she was done hiding. Her career didn't end. In fact, her next album, Yes I Am, was her biggest-selling album ever. Melissa Etheridge used her rock fame to come out. Our next artist was born into a famous music family, which made his own journey even more complicated. 10. Rufus Wainwright. When your mom and dad are both famous folk music legends, all eyes are on you from the day you are born. That's the story for Rufus Wainwright. He grew up in a world surrounded by famous musicians. You might think he would just follow in his parents' footsteps. But Rufus's style was totally different. It was big, bold, and theatrical. His music was filled with complex arrangements, orchestras, and opera. And from the very beginning of his solo career in the late 1990s, Rufus was completely open about who he loved. He never really had a secret phase in his public career. He just was who he was, and he wrote about it in his songs. His music often talked about his life and his experiences as a gay man. He wasn't a secret star, but he was a rock star who was openly gay at a time when many others were still hiding. Rufus was open from the start. But our next star was in one of the biggest boy bands on Earth. He had to keep his secret for decades, and the truth only came out by accident. 11. Jonathan Knight. If you were a kid in the late 80s or early 90s, you could not escape the New Kids on the Block. They were, to put it mildly, the biggest boy band on the planet. They were 5 guys from Boston, and they caused mass hysteria everywhere they went. Jonathan Knight was one of the 5, known as the quiet one, or the shy one. Millions of fans screamed his name and had his picture on their wall. But the thing nobody tells you is that he was suffering. The intense fame gave him very bad anxiety. It got so bad that he eventually left the band. For almost 20 years, he lived a normal, quiet life, working in real estate. Then, in 2011, something weird happened. Tiffany, a pop singer also from the 80s, was on a TV show. She was talking about her time touring with the New Kids. She casually mentioned that Jonathan was gay. Whoops! She had accidentally outed him to the world. Jonathan then released a statement confirming it. He said he had been out to his friends and family for 20 years and just never felt the need to make a big public announcement. Jonathan Knight was outed by accident. Our next star was in an even bigger boy band, and the pressure to keep his secret was, to put it mildly, intense. 12. Lance Bass. You think New Kids was big? Then came NSYNC. In the late 90s and early 2000s, this group ruled the entire world. They were at the very top of the pop universe, selling millions and millions of albums. Lance Bass was one of the 5, the one with the low voice. But Lance was living a complete secret. He was in the biggest band in the world with Justin Timberlake. But he was terrified. He knew he was gay, but he felt he couldn't tell anyone. He thought it would destroy the band. He thought it would ruin the fantasy for all the fans. So he stayed quiet. He dated men in secret, but he was living in constant fear. He waited. He waited until the group was done and had gone their separate ways. Then, in 2006, he made his move. He appeared on the cover of People magazine with a simple headline, "I'm gay." He was 27 years old and finally felt free to tell his story and live his life out in the open. Lance Bass had to wait for his band to end. Our next star was a global pop and rock king, but he also waited, finally sharing his truth at 38 on his own website. 13. Ricky Martin. From a young boy in the band Menudo to a global solo superstar, Ricky Martin had everyone livin' la vida loca. In the late 90s, he was one of the biggest stars in the world. He was a huge heartthrob, and people everywhere were crazy about him. And for years, people asked him about his private life. Interviewers would always try to get him to talk about who he was dating, but he always avoided the question. He would laugh it off or change the subject. He was hiding. He later said he was scared. He had been told by people around him that if he came out, everything would be over. Finally, at 38 years old, he had enough of hiding. He was a father now and wanted to live an honest life for his kids. In 2010, he wrote a long, heartfelt note on his website. He told the world his truth. He said he was a fortunate same-gender man and that he was blessed to be who he was. Ricky Martin waited until he was 38. Our next star was a true chameleon. He played with his image so much, nobody knew what was real and what was an act. 14. David Bowie. David Bowie. He was more than a musician. He was an artist. He was a chameleon. He was an alien from Mars. Or at least that's what he played on stage as his character, Ziggy Stardust. Bowie changed his look, his sound, and his whole personality all the time. What many overlooked was that this was all part of his genius. Bowie loved to confuse people. Back in 1972, long before almost anyone else, he told a music newspaper that he was gay. This was a huge statement at the time. Then, a few years later, in 1976, he told Playboy magazine that he was actually attracted to both genders. But then, years after that, he married a famous supermodel, Iman. He then said in an interview that he was always just a closet attracted to the opposite gender, and that his earlier comments were just part of his characters. To put it mildly, Bowie was whatever he wanted to be, whenever he wanted to be it. He was a true pioneer who played with identity itself. Bowie was a master of mystery. Our next star is from today's generation, and his journey to fame on a TV show put his private life right in the spotlight. 15. Adam Lambert. In 2009, the world of television was dominated by one show, American Idol. It was a cultural juggernaut, a machine that minted superstars. And onto that stage walked a singer named Adam Lambert. From his very first audition, it was clear he was not like anyone else. He had a massive, soaring theatrical voice. He had a glam rock style, complete with black nail polish and eyeliner. And he had a level of confidence that was mesmerizing. He didn't just sing the songs, he transformed them. His performance of Mad World is still considered one of the most iconic moments in the show's history. Week after week, he blew everyone away. The judges were stunned. The audience was captivated. He was the absolute front-runner, a phenomenon. But then the whispers started. While he was competing on the show, pictures of him with another man started to surface online. In 2009, this was still a huge deal. Blogs and forums lit up. People began to speculate. Would this controversy derail his chances? Would it cost him the title? It became a massive distraction. How did Adam handle it? He didn't. He never addressed it. He just focused on his performances, delivering show-stopping numbers week after week. He sang with Kiss. He belted out Led Zeppelin. He was undeniable. He ended up being the runner-up that season in a finale that shocked many. But it didn't matter. He had already become a huge star. The moment the show ended, he was on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. The headline was blunt, and in that interview, he confirmed his truth. He said, "Yep, it's true." He explained that he had never hidden it. He just didn't want it to be the only thing people talked about. He wanted his talent to speak first. His honesty, right at the launch of his career, was a massive deal. He didn't hide, and he didn't let it define him. He became a multi-platinum artist. And today he performs all over the world, filling the legendary shoes of Freddie Mercury as the lead singer for the iconic band Queen. Adam Lambert owned his truth right as his career began. Our next star was the voice of a massive 90s one-hit wonder, but she kept her own story quiet for years. 16. Linda Perry. And I say, hey, what's going on? You know that song. You absolutely know that song. In 1993, it was inescapable. It was a massive, massive hit all over the world. It was raw, it was acoustic, and it was powered by a voice that could shake stadiums. The band was four non-blondes, and the singer with that powerful, booming voice and the signature big top hat was Linda Perry. She was, for a moment, the quintessential rock star. The band had that one giant, world-conquering song, and then they faded away. They were the definition of a one-hit wonder. And for most people, that's where the story ends. But the thing nobody tells you is what Linda Perry did next. This is the real story. She didn't disappear. She went behind the scenes. She became a super producer, one of the most powerful and influential songwriters in the entire music business. You know her work, even if you don't know her name. She's the one who wrote Get the Party Started for Pink, completely reinventing her career. She's the one who wrote the global anthem Beautiful for Christina Aguilera. She's written for Gwen Stefani, Alicia Keys, and countless others. She is a true genius behind the curtain, a Svengali who crafted the sound of the 2000s. What about her personal life? Linda has been openly lesbian for most of her career. Back in the 90s, during her brief time in the spotlight, it wasn't a huge public discussion. The media was different then. But she never hid who she was. She just focused on the music, first as a performer and then as the secret weapon behind some of the biggest pop hits of the last 2 decades. Linda Perry went from the front of the stage to the hidden power center of the industry. Our next artist also had a unique, unforgettable voice, starting in one genre and moving to rock, all while her personal life was a closely guarded secret. 17. K.D. Lang. Many people are crazy about K.D. Lang's voice, and for good reason. It's not just beautiful, it's technically brilliant, a transcendent instrument that can convey heartbreaking emotion. She started her career in a surprising place, country music. In the 1980s, she emerged from Canada as a cowpunk artist, but she never really fit in with the other country stars in Nashville. Nashville was a world of big hair, rhinestones, and traditional values. K.D. Lang had short, spiky hair and often wore men's suits. She had a very androgynous, captivating look. She was an artist, through and through. But the country music world didn't know what to do with her. Then, in 1992, her album Ingenue was released, featuring the massive, haunting hit, Constant Craving. She was on the verge of becoming a global pop superstar. And right at that moment, she gave an interview to a magazine called The Advocate, and officially came out. To put it mildly, the country music world was not happy. This was a huge, huge risk. This was 1992. Some country radio stations in America, particularly in the South, actually banned her music. They flat out refused to play her songs. She was labeled controversial. She had taken a stand, and the industry she came from turned its back on her. But K.D. Lang didn't back down. She didn't apologize. She kept making her art, her way. She left country music behind and moved fully into the world of pop and vocal standards, where she was celebrated for her astonishing voice. She won multiple Grammys. She performed at the Olympics. She became a beloved icon who stood up for who she was, even when it cost her an entire audience. K.D. Lang risked her career in the 90s. Our next artist is from the indie rock world, and he made his identity the absolute core of his music from day one. 18. Mark Weigel. Not all rock stars are famous all over the world. Some are heroes in the indie music scene, trailblazers who change the game for those who come after. Mark Weigel, pronounced Weigel, is a folk rock singer-songwriter who made a very important, very brave choice when he started his career. In the late 1990s, the music industry was still ruled by fear. The "don't ask, don't tell" policy was in full effect for many artists. The conventional wisdom was that coming out was career suicide, that you would alienate your audience and be dropped by your label. Mark Weigel decided to do the exact opposite. From his very first album in the late 1990s, he decided he was not going to hide. He wasn't going to use vague pronouns like you or they in his love songs. He wasn't going to write coded lyrics. He wrote songs that were openly, explicitly, and honestly about his life as a gay man. He wrote about love. He wrote about relationships. He wrote about heartbreak. And he wrote about his own experiences in the community. At a time when many mainstream artists were still deep in the closet, Mark put his truth right into his music for everyone to hear. This was revolutionary for the folk scene. He wasn't trying to be a mainstream star. He was trying to be an honest star. He built his career by being authentic. He found a dedicated, loyal audience that loved him for his stories and his courage. They saw their own lives reflected in his music, something that was incredibly rare at the time. He wasn't a secret star. He was a rock star who was proudly out when many, many others were not. Mark Weigel was an indie hero, But our next star was a pioneer on a completely different level. She was a godmother of rock and roll from the 1930s, and her secret life is a new discovery that changes music history. 19. Sister Rosetta Tharpe. This is a big one. Pay attention. You might not know her name, but you absolutely know her sound. Sister Rosetta Tharpe is called the godmother of rock and roll. Why? Because she was playing the electric guitar and mixing sacred gospel music with the secular, raw energy of the blues way back in the 1930s and 1940s. Think about that. A black woman standing in front of big bands and church audiences, shredding on an electric guitar. This had never been done. Her style, her sound, her attitude. This was the literal birth of rock and roll. She was a massive influence on everyone who came after. A young Elvis Presley was obsessed with her. Chuck Berry admitted that his entire guitar-playing style was just him trying to copy Sister Rosetta. Little Richard, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis. They all started by listening to her. She was a true pioneer, a one-of-a-kind performer. She was a gospel superstar who played in churches, but she also played in nightclubs. This was, to put it mildly, wild and incredibly controversial. She broke every rule. But she had a secret. For decades, her private life was a mystery. But as historians and biographers have dug deeper, they have found the truth. Letters, journals, and accounts from those who knew her confirm it. Sister Rosetta Tharpe had private, intimate, romantic relationships with other women, including other performers on the gospel circuit. She was a queer woman, a rock star before rock stars even existed, shredding on a guitar in the 1930s, all while navigating the deeply segregated and religious worlds of her time. Her secret life was completely hidden from the public, a story that is only now being told. Sister Rosetta was a pioneer whose secret stayed hidden for 70 years. Did you know that some of the most talented musicians met their end in ways so shocking that their stories still echo through music history, from a guitarist electrocuted mid-performance to a metal icon gunned down on stage? Here are 15 rock and roll stars who died live on stage. First, Leslie Harvey. Leslie Harvey had the kind of talent that could stop people in their tracks. A Scottish guitarist with an electrifying presence, he played with Stone the Crows, a band that was starting to make real waves in the rock world. But on May 3, 1972, during a concert in Swansea, Wales, his career and life came to a sudden and horrific end. While performing on stage, Harvey unknowingly reached for an ungrounded microphone while gripping his guitar. The jolt of electricity surged through his body, rendering him helpless as the crowd watched in horror. Before anyone could react, the damage was done. He collapsed, lifeless, on the stage. When medics arrived, there was nothing they could do. At just 27 years old, a rising rock star had been silenced in a way so brutal that it sent chills down the spine of the entire music industry. It was a tragedy that could have been prevented. But as it often goes in rock and roll, safety took a back seat to the spectacle. His death was one of those cruel twists of fate, made even crueler by the fact that he had dodged disaster before. Years earlier, he had been offered a spot in Lynyrd Skynyrd, the very band that would later experience one of rock's most infamous plane crashes. But fate had its own twisted sense of irony. Instead of the sky, it was the very stage where he thrived that took his life. A man who lived for music, taken out by the very thing that fueled his passion. Second, Dimebag Darrell. Dimebag Darrell didn't just play guitar. He made it scream, cry, and explode with raw energy. His work with Pantera and later Damageplan cemented his legacy as one of the most blistering guitarists in metal history. But on December 8, 2004 in Columbus, Ohio, his final performance turned into a scene straight out of a nightmare. As Damageplan tore through their set, a gunman stormed the stage and unleashed chaos, firing shots into the crowd and onto the stage. Dimebag was hit multiple times, collapsing as the music screeched to a halt. The crowd, stunned and helpless, watched as paramedics fought to save his life. But it was too late. The man who had defined an era of heavy metal was gone, eliminated in front of his own fans. The shooter, a former Marine with severe mental health issues, claimed that Pantera had stolen his music, a twisted delusion that led to one of the most shocking deaths in rock history. Security at the venue was caught off guard, and before anyone could intervene, the damage had been done. It was a brutal reminder that even in the world of music, where artists should be free to pour their souls into their craft, danger still lurks. The industry was rocked to its core, mourning a legend who had so much more to give. A man whose hands could tear through guitar solos with effortless precision was stopped, not by age, not by substances, but by a bullet. The silence left behind was deafening. Nick Menza. Nick Menza wasn't just a drummer, he was a machine. His years with Megadeth solidified his place in metal history, and even after his time with the band, he continued to do what he loved, pounding the drums with a precision that only a select few could match. But on May 21, 2016, in Los Angeles, California, that relentless rhythm came to an abrupt halt. While performing with his band OHM, Menza suddenly collapsed mid-set. For a split second, the audience thought it might be part of the act, but as he lay motionless, reality set in. Something was terribly wrong. The cause? Heart failure. One moment, he was lost in the music, and the next, he was gone. 51 years old, still in his prime, still bringing his energy to the stage, and in an instant, it was over. Unlike some of rock's other tragic losses, there was no violence, no freak accident, just a heart that decided it had played its last beat. It was an eerie and unsettling way to go. No warning, no grand exit, just silence. A musician who lived for the roar of the crowd was met with the quiet of finality, leaving fans and bandmates in disbelief. The music stopped, and for those who knew and admired Menza, it felt like an entire era had ended with him. 4. Johnny Ace. Johnny Ace had charisma, talent, and a voice that could melt even the hardest hearts. He dominated the rhythm and blues scene in the 1950s, climbing the ranks with his smooth vocals and undeniable charm. But on December 25, 1954, backstage at a concert in Houston, Texas, that rising star came crashing down. During a break between sets, Ace started fooling around with a revolver. Whether it was an act of bravado or sheer recklessness, no one will ever know. He spun the cylinder, raised the gun, and pulled the trigger. A single gunshot rang out, and just like that, he was gone. 25 years old. One moment, he was laughing and performing, and the next, his lifeless body was slumped over. The crowd had no idea what had just happened, only that the man they came to see was suddenly no longer there. In the aftermath, stories circulated. Some said he had been showing off, boasting that the gun wasn't loaded. Others claimed it was a drunken mistake. Either way, it didn't matter. The result was the same. One of R&B's most promising voices was silenced by his own hand. It was a senseless and entirely avoidable death, the kind that left fans shaking their heads and wondering how someone so talented, so young, could make a decision that ended it all in a single second. 5. Jackie Wilson. Imagine pouring every ounce of your soul into a song, giving the crowd exactly what they came for, and then, just like that, your body gives out. That's exactly what happened to Jackie Wilson on the night of September 29, 1975, in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. The man was deep into Lonely Teardrops, a song that had made audiences swoon for years, when his body decided it had had enough. Right there, mid-performance, he suffered a massive heart attack and hit the stage like a falling statue. The audience? They thought it was part of the act. The dramatic collapse, the way he slumped onto the floor, it seemed too surreal to be anything but showmanship. But Wilson wasn't faking anything. His heart had stopped playing along, and his body soon followed. Paramedics rushed to the scene, but the damage had already been done. The lack of oxygen to his brain left him in a persistent vegetative state, one that would stretch on for 9 agonizing years. His family, his fans, and those who had once called him a legend watched helplessly as the man once known as Mr. Excitement was reduced to silence. He spent those years in a nursing home, his once electric energy drained down to a shell of what he used to be. And when he finally passed away on January 21st, 1984, it was almost as if the world had forgotten the electricity he once brought to the stage. A man who had defined an era was gone, his final moment spent in agony on the very stage that had made him famous. 6. Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa wasn't the kind of musician who played by the rules, and maybe that's why the universe decided to test just how tough he really was. It happened on December 10, 1971, at London's Rainbow Theatre. Zappa was in his element, tearing through his set, when a deranged fan decided to make himself part of music history. Out of nowhere, the guy charged the stage and shoved Zappa straight off the edge. The musician didn't just fall, he crashed down into the orchestra pit, breaking bones and rattling his skull. The injuries were brutal: a crushed larynx, a broken leg, and a concussion that would change his voice forever. The physical trauma was bad enough, but the long-term effects were worse. Zappa spent months in recovery, his ability to perform altered permanently. His voice, once powerful and distinct, was left with a lower pitch, a constant reminder of the violence that had been inflicted on him. But beyond the physical toll, there was the psychological weight. Zappa had never been the kind of musician to play it safe, but after that night, he was forced to consider his own mortality in a way he never had before. And as if the physical pain wasn't enough, he spent the rest of his life suffering from chronic health issues that many believe were set in motion that night. He may have survived the fall, but it left him permanently altered. The man who had once been unstoppable suddenly had limits. And in the end, it wasn't the music industry or the critics that slowed him down. It was a single moment of madness that stole the fire from one of rock's most rebellious spirits. Even after recovering, Zappa could never fully shake the impact of that night. The injuries forced him to change his performances, shifting his focus more toward composition and studio work than the physically demanding live shows that had made him a star. He continued to create until the end of his life, but the shadow of that fall never really left him. 7th Judge Dredd. If there was ever a musician who lived for shock value, it was Judge Dredd. The man made a career out of writing the kind of songs that would make your grandmother clutch her pearls and whisper a prayer. He reveled in controversy, using his music to poke fun at authority and make people laugh at the things they weren't supposed to talk about. But on March 13, 1998, the joke was on him. He was on stage in Canterbury, England, doing what he did best, making people laugh, dance, and forget about the dullness of life, when his heart decided to call it quits. He collapsed mid-performance, and before the audience could process what was happening, he was gone. Just like that. 1 minute, he was a larger-than-life performer, and the next, he was a legend frozen in time. No grand exit, no farewell tour, just an artist who quite literally died doing what he loved. The news of his passing sent ripples through the reggae and ska communities. Judge Dredd had always been an unconventional star, and in the end, even his death played by its own rules. In a way, it was fitting. He had never been one for theatrics outside of his lyrics, and he certainly didn't plan a dramatic, drawn-out farewell. Instead, his final moments were spent in the place that mattered most to him, the stage. His music was often dismissed by critics as nothing more than comedic novelty, but those who understood him knew he was more than that. He was a force of nature, a man who challenged the status quo with humor and irreverence. And when he left this world, he did it without warning, without pretense, just a sudden, brutal departure that made sure no one would ever forget him. 8. Tiny Tim. Tiny Tim wasn't just a musician. He was a walking paradox, wrapped in a ukulele and a falsetto voice that left people both enchanted and slightly unsettled. He wasn't your typical rock star, not even close, but somehow he made sure you couldn't look away. Whether you were laughing, cringing, or genuinely vibing with his music, he got a reaction, and that's more than most artists can say. Fast forward to November 30th, 1996, at a gala in Minneapolis. He took the stage one last time, frail but still clinging to the one thing that defined him: performing. He gave the audience what they came for, his signature oddball charm, the unmistakable warble of Tiptoe Through the Tulips. And then, just like that, he was gone. A heart attack cut the show short, a tragic yet fitting curtain call for a man who lived for the spotlight. The warning signs had been there for years. His health was failing. Doctors practically begged him to slow down. But telling Tiny Tim to take it easy was like telling a storm to stop blowing. He kept pushing himself because that's who he was. He wasn't built for longevity. He knew that. But he also knew that a life without performing wasn't much of a life at all. So he kept going until, well, he couldn't. His final act wasn't some over-the-top rock and roll exit. No wild theatrics, no shocking scandal, just a man who lived and breathed music, taking his last breath doing what he loved. It was almost poetic in its simplicity. But even in death, he made sure people kept talking. Because whether you adored him or found him bizarre beyond belief, you remembered him. Tiny Tim was never meant to fit the mold, and he never tried. He defied expectations, ignored the naysayers, and leaned into his own weirdness without a second thought. And that's why, decades later, we're still talking about him. Love him, hate him, doesn't matter. You couldn't forget him if you tried. 9. Mark Sandman. Imagine crafting a unique sound, building a dedicated following, and then dropping dead right in front of your audience. That's exactly what happened to Mark Sandman, the genius behind Morphine, the band that turned alternative rock into something smoother, cooler, and strangely hypnotic. It was July 3, 1999, in Palestrina, Italy. He was mid-performance, probably lost in the groove, when his body decided it had enough. One moment the music was flowing, the next, Sandman collapsed on stage, never to get up again. The official cause? Heart attack. But let's be real. This was a guy who lived life hard, pushed boundaries, and played like there was no tomorrow. Turns out there really wasn't. What made it even more tragic was that Sandman wasn't just another musician. He was an innovator, a guy who played a two-string bass and made it work. He crafted songs that felt like late-night confessions set to jazz-infused rock. Losing him meant losing a sound that was both eerie and intoxicating. And how's this for a lasting impression? The man literally played himself to death. Talk about leaving everything on the stage. It was a poetic yet devastating way for a musician so embedded in his craft to go. His fans didn't just lose a performer, they lost an entire musical philosophy in one crushing moment. Morphine was never about mainstream success. It was about making music that felt different. Sandman's haunting voice, minimalist approach, and almost eerie ability to mix rock with jazz made the band one of a kind. His death wasn't just a tragedy for his bandmates, it was a full stop at the end of a story that should have had so many more chapters. His bandmates tried to keep things alive for a while, but there was no replacing the man who had been the heart and soul of Morphine. 10. David Olney. Most performers would probably panic if they felt their body giving out in front of a live audience. Not David Olney. The folk singer-songwriter, born on March 23, 1948, was mid-performance at the 30A Songwriters Festival in Florida on January 18, 2020, when something wasn't quite right. Did he freak out? Did he collapse in a dramatic, attention-grabbing way? Not even close. He simply paused, mumbled an apology, and sat still. And that was it. Just like that, he was gone. It was an oddly poetic exit for a man whose music was filled with stories of love, loss, and life's inevitable tragedies. He spent his life crafting songs that felt like old souls whispering forgotten tales, and in the end, he became one of them. Over 20 albums to his name, his music touched countless lives, and his words were borrowed by other artists who understood the depth of his songwriting. The irony? If anyone had written a song about a musician dying peacefully mid-performance, Olney probably would have been the one to do it. There was something almost eerie about the way he went. It wasn't chaos, it wasn't a sudden collapse that left people in shock. It was stillness, as if he knew this was the last note in the song of his life. Those who were there didn't even realize what had happened at first. It was the kind of death that felt like it belonged in a story rather than reality. But it was real, and it left an impact. The man had spent his entire life performing, telling stories, sharing music, and in the end, he left doing exactly that. 11. Bruce Hampton. A performer collapses mid-show and the crowd thinks it's all part of the act, until it's not. That's exactly what went down on May 1st, 2017, when Bruce Hampton, an icon in the jam band scene, decided to make his exit in the most theatrical way possible. It was his 70th birthday celebration. The stage was packed with musicians honoring him, and the Fox Theater in Atlanta was buzzing with energy. Then, right at the encore, Hampton fell. The crowd? They cheered? The band? They kept playing? Everyone thought it was another one of his bizarre performance stunts. Except this time, he didn't get up. When reality finally sunk in, it was too late. Hampton had left the building, figuratively and literally. It was a fitting end for a man whose entire career thrived on pushing musical boundaries, creating strange, hypnotic sounds, and mentoring the next generation of experimental artists. The man blurred the lines between reality and performance so much that even his death felt like part of the act. If there's an afterlife, he's probably still improvising. Hampton wasn't your typical rock star, but he was a force in the music world. He created a space where musicians could experiment, break rules, and find their own voices. That final show wasn't just another concert, it was a testament to everything he had built. He went out surrounded by music, laughter, and the energy of a crowd that adored him. It was almost as if he planned it that way. In a way, he left the perfect final scene, one that no one saw coming until it was over. 12th, Scott Johnson. Unlike the others on this list, Scott Johnson wasn't the star of the show. He was the guy making sure everything was in place so the stars could shine. But on June 16, 2012, while setting up for a Radiohead concert at Downsview Park in Toronto, everything went horribly wrong. The stage roof collapsed, eliminating him instantly and injuring 3 other crew members. 1 second, he was working, doing what he loved. The next, he was gone, crushed under the very stage meant to bring music to thousands. This wasn't just a freak accident. It was an outright disaster that led to lawsuits, investigations, and a whole lot of finger-pointing. The music industry thrives on spectacle, but this was a harsh reminder that behind every massive show, there are people risking their lives to make it happen. Johnson may not have been a rock star in the traditional sense, but he died making sure the music played on. And when the dust settled, his death forced the industry to take a hard look at how it treats the people working behind the scenes. Concerts are supposed to be controlled chaos, a safe kind of reckless energy where the only thing getting destroyed is the crowd's sense of restraint. But that stage collapse exposed the brutal reality. Sometimes the chaos gets out of hand. His death didn't just shake up Radiohead and their crew, it rattled the entire industry. Suddenly, safety wasn't just an afterthought, and people started asking tough questions about how live events were being managed. 13. Atsushi Sakurai. Atsushi Sakurai wasn't just a singer, he was a force, the kind of performer who could hold an audience captive with nothing but his voice and presence. Born on March 7, 1966, in Fujioka, Japan, he spent decades shaping the sound of Bucktick, a band that refused to fade into the background. With his deep, commanding vocals and an aura that was equal parts elegance and danger, Sakurai became an icon in Japan's rock scene. The man had a way of making every lyric feel like it was ripped straight from his soul, and fans felt that. He wasn't just singing, he was bleeding emotions into the mic night after night. That dedication would prove to be his undoing. On October 19, 2023, Buck Tick took the stage at KT Zepp Yokohama. The air was thick with anticipation. Fans had come to witness the spectacle, and Sakurai wasn't one to disappoint. But something was off. Maybe it was the way he moved, a fraction slower than usual, or how his voice carried a strain that wasn't part of the act. In the middle of the set, his body betrayed him. He showed clear signs of distress before being rushed off stage. The hospital was only minutes away, but time wasn't on his side. A brainstem hemorrhage had already sealed his fate. He died that night, leaving behind a stunned crowd and a legacy cut brutally short. 1 second, a rock god commanding the stage. The next, a life extinguished. 14. Ken Snakehips Johnson. Johnson wasn't just a musician, he was a force. He moved like silk, danced like he had no bones, and led a band that could set any place on fire with rhythm. The West Indian Dance Orchestra wasn't just a group. They were the sound of a London that wanted to shake off the weight of war, if only for a few hours. Johnson? He was the heartbeat. When he took the stage, you weren't just watching a performer. You were getting lost in something bigger than yourself. And then, March 8, 1941, happened. The Café de Paris was packed, glimmering, alive. A safe haven where war felt like a distant nightmare. The music was rich, the crowd was swaying, the night was golden, but war doesn't wait for the perfect moment to ruin everything. In a single breath, the glamour turned to rubble. A German bomb cut through the ceiling, shattering the illusion and taking Johnson with it. 1 minute, he was electrifying the room. The next, he was gone, just like that. The Blitz had already stolen so much, but this hit differently. London lost a sound, a soul, a man who gave people a reason to dance when everything else told them to despair. Snakehips should have had decades of music left in him. Instead, all that remained was silence, smoke, and the chilling reminder that war doesn't care who you are. It takes what it wants. And that night, it took a legend, 15th Leonard Warren. And then, in the middle of the aria, Morir tremenda cosa, which, by the way, literally means to die, a momentous thing. Fate decided to play its cruelest trick. 1 moment, Warren was commanding the stage. The next, his voice faltered, something unheard of for a man so in control. Then, his body gave out. Right there, in front of a packed house, he collapsed. Silence swallowed the theater. The audience, waiting for the next powerful note, got something far more chilling. This wasn't part of the performance. The curtain dropped, chaos erupted backstage, and doctors scrambled to save him. But did you know that over 500 million rock albums have been sold by artists who never fully shared who they really loved? From hidden love stories behind platinum records to stage legends who broke all the rules. 25 rock and roll stars you didn't know were gay. 1. Janis Joplin. Janis Joplin had a voice that scratched your soul. She screamed and cried through songs like someone who felt every note. She wasn't just loud on stage. Off stage, she lived big. Most people knew she dated men. Fewer knew she also had deep feelings for women. It wasn't shouted from rooftops. It wasn't hidden either. Friends saw it. Letters talked about it. There were moments when Janis tried to find real love, and it didn't always come from the places people expected. Back then, women who loved women were told to keep quiet. Janis didn't care. She went to parties. She brought who she wanted. She held hands when people looked. Sometimes, she broke down when they stared. Her heart was open, messy, and fast. She wanted to be loved. She wanted to feel free. That wild voice. It came from real pain and real love, from every part of who she was. You hear it in every word she sang, and you feel the truth, even if you didn't know why. 2. Pete Townshend. Pete Townshend smashed guitars like they were made of paper, but his words were what really hit hard. He was the mind behind The Who. He told stories in songs, but he also told some in real life. In interviews and books, Pete talked about feelings he had for men. He didn't try to be a headline. He just said it, quiet but clear. He didn't call it one thing. He said feelings could change. Life was not black and white. He thought deeply, even when others didn't. He wrote about lonely kids, broken dreams, and being trapped inside yourself. People thought he was just writing about others. Maybe he was writing about himself too. Pete didn't wear labels. He used his guitar and words to speak what others stayed silent about. If you listen close, you hear more than music. You hear the truth he never shouted, but always lived. 3. Joan Jett. Joan Jett never asked for your opinion. She wore black, played loud, and looked you straight in the eye. She sang about wanting, fighting, and never quitting. She didn't tell the world everything, but you could see it if you watched. Stories followed her, not gossip, but signs. Women talked about late nights and quiet look. Joan never stood on a stage and explained. She didn't have to. Her silence was strong. In a world where women had to act soft to get ahead, Joan didn't change. She held her guitar like a weapon and played like the room was hers. She didn't shout who she loved. She just lived it. People whispered, fans guessed. But to the ones who knew, Joan was more than just tough. She was brave in a way few dared to be. Her life was her own, even when the cameras rolled. She gave everything to her music. And maybe, just maybe, that music gave back what the world tried to take. 4. Billie Joe Armstrong. Billie Joe Armstrong made punk music sound like a cry for help and a fight for truth. He stood on stage with wild hair and a voice full of questions. He didn't hide who he was. He said it. He was bisexual, not in a speech, but in plain words. It shocked some fans. Others already knew, deep down. His songs weren't just about rebellion. They were about not fitting in, about wanting more, about being confused. Billy wore eyeliner, kissed who he wanted, and wrote about feelings most people locked away. He said being in the middle could feel lonely. But he sang it anyway. In his band, he was loud. At home, maybe he was quiet. But in his songs, he let the world in. He told teens it was okay to feel lost. He gave them a place to scream. He wasn't perfect, but he was real. And in a world full of fake smiles, that meant something. 5. Brandi Carlile. Brandi Carlile sings like someone who's been broken and healed again. Her voice shakes, then rises. She sings about family, pain, and holding on. She's married to a woman. She doesn't hide it. She brings it into the light. Her songs talk about real life, raising kids, finding home, being different in a small town. She doesn't wear glitter or dance on big stages. She stands still and lets her voice do the work. Her love is quiet, but strong. She sings about soft mornings and deep fights. She sings about not being welcome. But she keeps singing. She plays guitars and pianos. She tells her truth in every line. Some people tried to shut her out. Some radio shows wouldn't play her. But she didn't stop. She made her own place. Her fans came and stayed. Her love wasn't loud, but it was there in every word. Brandi didn't break the rules. She just lived past them. 6. Melissa Etheridge. Melissa Etheridge had a voice that sounded like it had lived through storms. Her songs were full of real feelings, not just empty words. She sang about heartbreak, love, and life falling apart. Her music was not fake or soft. It came from deep inside. In the early 1990s, she did something most rock stars were scared to do. She told the world she was gay. Many fans were shocked. Some didn't want to hear it, but she didn't hide or change who she was. She kept singing, and her songs hit even harder after that. She showed that you can be strong by being honest. Her fame didn't fade. It got brighter. She stood in the spotlight and didn't back down. Etheridge didn't need flashy costumes or tricks. Her power came from truth. Every time she walked on stage, she stood for people who were told to be quiet. She showed them they didn't have to hide. Her voice wasn't just loud, it meant something. And in a time when people were scared to speak, she spoke anyway. That bravery was louder than any guitar. 7. Brian Molko. Brian Molko never looked like the other rock stars. He wore eyeliner, skirts, and sometimes looked more like a model than a rocker. He made people stop and stare. His band, Placebo, came up in the 1990s. Their music was cold, sharp, and full of strange beauty. Molko said he was bisexual. He didn't make it a big show. He just lived that way. In a time when many singers hid who they were, he did the opposite. He made people uncomfortable and didn't say sorry for it. His look and his voice made people question what they thought they knew. Was a man supposed to look like this? Could he sing about pain and love and still be strong? Molko didn't give easy answers. He let the music do the talking. His lyrics were full of sadness and power. He didn't try to explain everything. That made his songs hit even harder. He gave a place in rock for people who didn't belong anywhere else. And he did it without asking for permission. Molko was a storm in the middle of a quiet room, and he changed the rules just by being himself. 8. Gary Numan. Gary Numan made music that felt like machines were dreaming. His songs had cold sounds, sharp beats, and strange words. But under that, there was a soft sadness. He didn't talk much about his feelings, but once he said he had early thoughts about other boys. That small moment said a lot. Numan didn't shout who he was. He kept things inside. Still, his songs were full of loneliness, fear, and wanting to belong. It was like he wrote from a place where no one else could go. He made fans feel like they weren't alone, even if he never gave them all the details. His music was different from the loud rock of the time. He stood apart, not just in sound, but in life. Some fans didn't notice. Others saw something in him that felt close to home. He wasn't trying to fit in. He was building something new, a world made of sound where being strange was okay. He didn't have to talk about identity. It was in the music, in the way he moved, in the silence between the words. Gary Numan proved you don't need to yell to be heard. 9. Bob Mould. Bob Mould helped shape the sound of punk in America. His band, Husker Du, made fast, loud music that felt like it was trying to break through walls. Later, with Sugar and then on his own, he kept writing songs that were full of feeling and fire. In the 1990s, he told people he was gay. He didn't make a big deal about it. He just said it and kept going. But that moment was big. Punk music was supposed to be about being real, but even in that space, being gay was hard. Mould carried that weight for years. After coming out, his music didn't get softer. It got deeper. He wrote about being alone, about feeling out of place, about trying to hold on. He didn't sell his story. He didn't make himself a hero. He just told the truth in a way that hit hard. Some fans left. Others leaned in closer. Mould never looked for praise. He just kept playing. His guitar was loud, but the real power was in the quiet pain behind the sound. He showed that being real is harder than being loud, and he never looked back. 10. Laura Jane Grace. Laura Jane Grace stood in front of crowds for years, yelling into a mic before she told the world her truth. She was the lead singer of Against Me, a punk band that never held back. In 2012, she said she was transgender. It wasn't a headline made for fun. It was a real thing said in a hard world. Grace didn't wait for people to say it was okay. She just said it. Her voice didn't shake. Her story was sharp, full of hard days and stares that didn't end. Her album Transgender Dysphoria Blues didn't try to be soft. It hit like a hammer. It told about living in a body that didn't feel right. It told about fear, about walking down a street and feeling eyes on you. Some fans didn't want to hear it. Some left, but others stayed and listened. Grace didn't ask for people to clap. She didn't make herself into a sign. She just told what she felt. Her voice, already loud, became something else, a signal for people who were lost. She didn't follow the rules of rock. She broke them and made new ones. Her pain became power, and her truth changed the stage forever. 11. Doug Pinnick. Doug Pinnick is the bassist and singer for the band King's X. Their sound is loud, heavy, and full of soul. In the late 1990s, Doug told the world he was gay. Back then, rock music didn't talk much about people like him. Metal bands were mostly about being tough and not showing feelings. When Doug shared his truth, it was a big deal. Some fans turned away. Some people said he didn't belong in heavy music. But Doug didn't stop playing. He kept writing songs and making music that was true to who he is. His voice is deep and full of emotion. His songs talk about pain, hope, and trying to be understood. On stage, he doesn't hide anything. He shows that real strength is being yourself. Other bands didn't know what to do with someone like him, but Doug kept going. Even when people pushed back, he pushed harder. His story shows that music can be honest. It can include everyone. You don't need to act a certain way to belong. Doug proved that being different can also mean being powerful. He didn't change who he was for anyone. He made the music world change instead. 12. Chuck Panozzo. Chuck Panozzo plays bass for the famous rock band Styx. They had big hits and played in huge arenas. But behind all the lights, Chuck had a secret. He kept quiet for years because he didn't think people would accept him. In the early 2000s, he finally came out as gay. He also shared that he was living with a serious illness. It was a brave thing to do. In a world that often hides these things, Chuck spoke up. He didn't want to lie anymore. Fans were shocked, but many stood by him. After coming out, Chuck didn't stop there. He began speaking to others about health and being honest. He went to events and told his story. Some people didn't like it. They thought rock stars should stay silent about personal stuff. Chuck didn't listen. He knew there were others like him who needed to hear the truth. Even when it was hard, he kept going. He stayed in the band, playing music with heart and strength. His bass lines held every song together. But it was his voice off stage that made the biggest change. He proved that rock music can be about truth, not just sound. 13. Julien Baker. Julien Baker writes music that feels like a cry from the heart. She plays guitar and sings in a quiet, strong way. Her songs talk about feeling lost, about pain, and about trying to find peace. She is open about being a lesbian. She also talks about deep sadness and the hard times she's lived through. Some people would rather she keep those things private, but she doesn't. Julien uses her music to say what others are scared to say. She was raised with strong faith, but she often felt torn between what she was taught and who she is. That fight shows up in her songs. Her words are full of real life. She doesn't try to sound perfect. She sounds honest. Her voice breaks sometimes. Her guitar playing feels like it's holding something fragile. She doesn't dress up for fame. She stands there with her truth. Her fans love her for that. Julien doesn't fit the old picture of a rock star. But that's the point. She makes room for people who were never seen before. She sings for those who feel small, showing that music can help carry pain, not just cover it up. 14. Katie Gavin. Katie Gavin is the lead singer of the band Muna. Their music mixes rock, pop, and a little bit of punk. But what really sets them apart is how their songs feel. Katie is openly queer and sings about love, heartbreak, and the fight to be yourself. She doesn't try to hide anything. Her voice is clear, and her words are full of feeling. Muna's songs are about falling apart and getting back up. They sing about wanting to be seen, about not fitting in, and about not giving up. Katy uses her place on stage to talk about things many are scared to say. She sings to people who feel left out. Muna plays shows where fans cry, dance, and sing every word. Their music is a home for people who never felt welcome in the usual rock world. Katy doesn't want to fit into old rules. She breaks them. Her look, her sound, her truth. None of it is what people expect. But that's what makes it matter. She makes space for new voices. Her songs give power to feelings people were told to hide. Her truth turns into sound, and that sound sticks with you. 15. Jake Shears. Jake Shears lit up stages as the lead singer of Scissor Sisters, a band that broke all the rules of what rock and pop could be. He danced in glitter, sang in falsetto, and brought queer joy to music that used to shut people like him out. From the start, Jake was loud about who he was, gay and proud, with no filter and no apologies. His shows felt like parties where everyone was finally free. Behind the glitter was grit. Jake grew up in a world that didn't make space for kids like him, but he didn't shrink. He turned every rejection into fuel. His lyrics mixed camp with pain, laughter with loneliness. He didn't try to fit into the mold of a typical rock star. He shattered it. He made being queer not just visible, but powerful. Jake Shears didn't just open doors. He kicked them down in heels and rhinestones. He worked with legends like Elton John, proving queer voices belonged at the top. His stage moves were wild, but his message was steady. Be loud, be bright, be free. Off stage, he wrote a memoir that laid it all bare: the struggle, the love, the fear, the fight. Jake didn't just sing about truth. He lived it, one spotlight at a time. 16. Patrick Wolf. Patrick Wolf didn't sound like other rock stars. His music was strange, pretty, and full of strong feelings. He used guitars, violins, pianos, and strange beats to make songs that felt like dreams and storms at the same time. He talked about love that didn't follow rules. He didn't hide that he was bisexual, even though most rock stars never said that out loud. Patrick didn't want to fit in. He wore long coats, dyed his hair bright red or blonde, and made videos that looked like old fairy tales mixed with modern pain. His songs told stories about people feeling lost or alone, people trying to find a place where they belong. He helped others feel seen. Patrick's music wasn't always on the radio, but it stayed with people. He didn't yell his truth, but he never hid it either. He stood in the middle of the stage and showed the world who he was, with all the color and noise and heartbreak that came with it. He made space for softness in a place that wanted loud, tough voices. He proved you don't need to change who you are to matter. 17. Roddy Bottum. Roddy Bottum didn't look like someone who would change metal forever. He played keyboard in Faith No More, a band known for its wild mix of sounds and big energy. In the early 1990s, Roddy told people he was gay. It shocked many. Most people thought heavy bands had to act strong and hide their real feelings. Roddy didn't care. He came out anyway. That alone made a big mark. Fans who felt different suddenly had someone they could point to and say, "He's like me." But Roddy didn't stop there. He later formed a new band called Imperial Teen. The songs were catchy and soft, but still strong. They talked about real things like heartbreak, being different, and growing up in a world that didn't feel safe. He wrote about love in ways that felt new. He didn't yell to be heard. He used sweet sounds and honest words to tell his truth. He looked like just another guy behind a keyboard, but Roddy Bottum made a quiet kind of power. He showed people they didn't have to hide. He changed what it meant to be in a rock band just by telling the truth. 18. Ezra Furman. Ezra Furman walks on stage wearing pearls and smudged lipstick. Her voice cracks and shakes, full of heat and sorrow. Her guitar makes messy, sharp sounds. She is not trying to be perfect. Her music is garage rock, indie rock, and everything in between. Ezra is a transgender woman and queer, but she doesn't stop to explain that in songs. She just sings about fear, hope, love, and not being safe in the world. She sings about faith, too, about trying to believe in something when everything feels wrong. Her music is loud and fast and sometimes hard to understand, but it's real. Her songs aren't cleaned up. They sound like someone running through a storm with their heart on fire. She talks about wanting to hide, about people treating her like she's broken. She sings about wanting to run far away. She doesn't want fame. She wants freedom. And she brings that fire to every stage. People in the crowd scream her name because they see themselves in her. Ezra's not here to be a hero. She's here to be honest. Her music doesn't ask for approval. It dares you to look closer and not look away. 19. Michael Angelikos. Michael Angelikos looked like the kind of guy who had it all. His band, Passion Pit, made shiny, fun songs that played on the radio. But behind that brightness, there was pain. Michael struggled with sadness and deep mental hurt for years. Then, in 2015, he came out as gay. It changed everything. People started to hear the old songs in a new way. Lyrics about feeling trapped, lonely, and lost suddenly made sense. Michael said he came out not for attention, but because he couldn't keep hiding. He was tired. All those years of smiling for cameras while hurting inside caught up to him. When he told the truth, it shook fans. His voice in songs always sounded a little too high, a little too full of ache. Now they knew why. He sang like someone who had been holding something in for too long. People who felt the same pain felt less alone. His story made people think about how many others were still hiding. Michael's journey wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in a world full of fake smiles, that kind of truth cuts deep. 20. Otep Shamaya. Otep Shamaya doesn't whisper, she roars. Her band, also named Otep, is full of noise, anger, and fire. She mixes metal music with sharp words, sometimes spoken like poems, sometimes screamed like a warning. Otep is a lesbian, and she never hid it. From the start, she stood up and said who she was. And not just that, she fought. She talked about violence, about being hurt, about standing strong when people try to silence you. Her concerts feel like battles. She shouts about things others won't, about pain, about power, about people being crushed and rising again. Her music is not soft. It punches through the air. She wears war paint on stage. She moves like someone who has been through fire and came out stronger. She didn't want to fit into rock's old rules. She broke them. She sang about being different in a world that punishes difference. She gave a voice to fans who were scared to speak. She didn't just make noise. She made space. And in that space, other people found their own power. Otep didn't ask for permission. She took the mic and never let go. 21. Lucas Silveira. Lucas Silveira changed what rock music could look and sound like. As the lead singer of The Clicks, he did something no one else had done before. He was the first transgender man signed to a major label in rock. That alone made people talk. But he didn't just show up. He brought songs filled with power, pain, and pride. His voice could shake a room. One moment soft and careful, the next full of strength and fight. His lyrics spoke of hard paths, fear of being different, and how it feels to stand up even when the world says sit down. He didn't try to hide who he was. In fact, being open was the whole point. His songs didn't ask for pity. They showed what courage really looks like. Lucas didn't want to be a symbol, but that's what he became for so many people. Fans who had never seen anyone like themselves on a stage saw him and felt less alone. He showed them a path, and while the music world didn't always welcome him, he never stopped. He used every stage to talk about real things: change, pain, hope, and being true to yourself. Some people tried to shut him out, others didn't understand, but Lucas kept going. He didn't need their approval. He had his voice, and he used it. That voice, full of real feeling, made him stand out. He wasn't just singing, he was telling a truth the world needed to hear. And even now, that voice still matters. 23. Lynn Breedlove. Lynn Breedlove never cared about being easy to understand. As the lead of Tribe 8, they brought a kind of energy most people had never seen before. Their shows were loud, rough, and full of fire. The band was part of the queercore punk scene, where being different wasn't just okay, it was the point. Breedlove sang and shouted about things many people didn't want to hear: gender, pain, freedom, and power. They didn't soften the message, they didn't play it safe. They told the truth with every word. Their music wasn't about being polite, it was about being seen. Breedlove made stages feel like battlefields. Each show was a fight against hate, shame, and silence. They used their body and voice to wake people up. And not everyone liked it. Some were scared, some were angry, but Breedlove didn't stop. They wanted the world to see queer people as strong, not hidden. Breedlove talked openly about their life. They didn't run from hard topics. They met them head on. They made space in punk music for people who were usually pushed out. That space didn't come easy. It came with shouting, shaking walls, and standing up when others sat down. Breedlove made sure their voice was heard, and because of that, more people found the courage to speak up too. 24. Ricky Wilson. Ricky Wilson helped shape a band that didn't sound like anyone else. The B-52s made music that was strange, bouncy, and bright. Behind that happy sound was a man holding a quiet truth. Ricky was gay at a time when being open about that could ruin your career, so he kept it private. He lived in a world that didn't make it easy. Still, his guitar playing made the band's songs come alive. His sound was full of color and rhythm. He helped turn weird into cool. He didn't talk about his personal life in public, but people close to him knew. And when he got sick, some figured out the truth. He passed away too soon, during a time when many people like him were being lost. The world didn't talk about it then. It looked away. But his band kept going, and they carried his spirit in every song. 25. Jay Bennett. Jay Bennett played in punk and garage bands that didn't care about fame. He played for the feeling, not the spotlight. One of his best-known bands was The Mirrors, part of the loud, raw music scene in Cleveland. That scene wasn't clean. It was messy, fast, and full of noise, but it was real. Jay stood out in that world. He was openly gay, and he didn't hide it. That was bold at the time, especially in a scene full of rough edges and closed minds. He didn't sing soft songs. He sang with grit. His guitar playing had punch, and when he performed, people noticed. He didn't ask to be accepted. He claimed the stage and made it his. Some didn't like that. Some turned away, but Jay kept playing. He made sure people like him could see themselves in the music. He didn't get rich. He didn't become a household name. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that he broke down doors others were too scared to touch. He showed that being true to yourself is more powerful than fitting in. His music still lives in those gritty recordings and old show flyers. And for those who heard him, he left a mark that won't fade.